Hey everybody, fully here for the weekly news recap of the 23rd to the 29th of December 2024. So as you might imagine with Christmas, holidays, public holidays, etc., not a whole lot going on in the video game industry in terms of announcements and that kind of thing, but we do have one or two things to show, well, two things to show here. So first up is Restitched. So this is coming from Trixel Creative, and as you'll see in a second, it's a lot less Naughty Bear and a lot more LittleBigPlanet. Like, it's very much LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2. I'm going to skip ahead to the gameplay sections, but you can see if you ever played LittleBigPlanet 1 or LittleBigPlanet 2, these are... they're looking very similar. They're almost like, you know, user-generated levels, which is what LittleBigPlanet was. I guess the games are old enough now, I suppose, that maybe people don't remember them, or were unfamiliar with them in the first place. The PS3 now being a retro console, I suppose. So LittleBigPlanet series was a platforming game, but also on top of that, it had a very robust, very powerful level editor itself. And really the general thrust of the game was to get you to make your own levels. And it had a really strong community. All of the games, I think, were interplayable as well. So LittleBigPlanet 1 levels worked in LittleBigPlanet 2, and then LittleBigPlanet 2 levels worked in LittleBigPlanet 3, and so on and so forth. So the originals were made by Media Molecule. They did 1 and 2. And then they went on to make Dreams. Dreams was a much even more ambitious version of the user-generated thing. Also had a very strong community. And then Sumo Digital made LittleBigPlanet 3, and then they made Sackboy's Big Adventure, which was a much more just platform game. There was no user-generated stuff in there. Media Molecule have since... I think the company is technically still going, but Sony has basically stopped support for Dreams servers, and the LittleBigPlanet servers went down a good while ago. So this is kind of a spiritual successor, I suppose, because Sony aren't fucking doing it anymore. So it's up to Restitched and Trixel Creative to do it themselves. So wishlist now, Steam. Even this kind of overlay almost has a bit of a PlayStation LittleBigPlanet vibe to it. There's obviously no release date or anything, so if you're interested, keep an eye on it on Steam. It would be hilarious to see if this ever makes a console or PlayStation release. That would be pretty funny. Anyway, moving on. I haven't changed scenes. Sorry. Okay, now I've changed scenes. I keep forgetting to do that. This next thing is just a remastered collection, the Dread Out games. Dread Out is was a survival horror thing. Came out on iOS, iPhones initially, iPads and what have you, a very long time ago. This was like one of the earliest decent games, I guess, on iOS. Even at that, it wasn't particularly decent. But it's set in Indonesia. There's a lot of Indonesian horror folklore in it. I believe it was an episodic thing when it came out initially. The remaster collection then will be for PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, and it has all of the episodes collected as well as a brand new episode. So that'll be in January of next year. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you probably have your Christmas games and what have you. And as I think you can probably appreciate, nobody's launching a game Christmas week. Or at least nobody's sane, but some people are doing it. Anyway, we have Wukong's Son, Black Legend, which is, of course, designed entirely for your parents to pick up the wrong game for you. This is very much not Black Myth Wukong. It's Wukong's Son, Black Legend. Definitely different. There's no art on Metacritic, but the box art is extremely similar to Black Myth Wukong. Anyway, if you don't want to be tricked, but you do find yourself, I don't know, horny over the Christmas break, you've got real hentai 4. Not like that fake hentai. Almost got me fired. No, this is real hentai despite it being absolutely AI generated, which means it's fake hentai. They got a really interesting brain teaser title going on there. You know, this is not a pipe. Ceci. I'm not gonna say it. There's a French version. The French title of that piece of art that I don't remember. Anyway, it's real hentai even though it's fake, and even though hentai is fake in the first place. Anyway, moving on. Unfortunately, though, it's now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, despite them being quiet with their announcements and updates and what have you, new releases, that didn't mean there wasn't some industry bullshit over the last week. So, first up, we have Xbox game streaming still down after 24 hours, reminding us that your phone isn't actually an Xbox. So, this is kind of two things happening at once. We have December 26th, St. Stephen's Day, Boxing Day, some places. Working day in some other places. It's a public holiday in Ireland. We do St. Stephen's Day here. Anyway, the day after Christmas. Microsoft confirmed that Game Pass cloud streaming platform wasn't working as expected. And wasn't working as expected is a generous term, meaning it just didn't fucking work at all. 24 hours later, still not working. Now at time of broadcast, it's December 29th, it is back up. But there was about 2 days where it was out. And that mightn't be, I mean, it's pretty bad. You know, people might have gotten an Xbox for Christmas only to not be able to use a much touted feature that they've been marketing a lot, the cloud streaming. But on top of that, Microsoft is pushing this idea that any kind of smart device is an Xbox. You know, your phone is an Xbox. Your laptop is an Xbox. Your PC is an Xbox. Your tablet is an Xbox. If you have a Fire Stick, you can turn your TV into an Xbox, and so on and so forth. Except no, because if the servers aren't working, it's not an Xbox. Microsoft has been pushing a new marketing slogan that claims everything connected to the internet is an Xbox, but as you can see, it's not happening. The game streaming service essentially allows you to play a large library of games across multiple devices, including tablets, phones, and TVs, as well as a bunch of other things. But obviously, it still seems that people can't even connect and play games on their phones or devices as of 3:30 p.m. December 27th. So we were close to resolving the issue at the time. They did eventually resolve it. But this is kind of the crux of the issue. Is the holiday season, Xbox really pushed the idea that its cloud streaming option could replace a console. You didn't need an Xbox if you're a Gamecast subscriber with a phone or a smart TV. You could just stream all those games instantly. And as a result, I imagine this Christmas season saw a lot of kids and teens get Game Pass subscriptions so they can stream games without their parents having to buy a pricey Xbox, except obviously they couldn't, because the servers were down. Whereas if they had bought an Xbox, they could at least play it off the disc. Or download the game, because the shop was still working, the download servers were still working. It was just specifically the cloud streaming that wasn't working. They keep trying this, you know, video game publishers, video game developers, platform holders, they keep trying to make the cloud streaming thing work. And it just doesn't. The infrastructure is not there. The technology is not ready. But they're gonna keep fucking trying it anyway. Moving on. Ex-Blizzard veterans promising new game cancelled within months. So this is kind of more of a rumor at the moment, but Astro Pulse Reincarnation, which is meant to be Wei Wang's new game, is formerly of Blizzard, formerly of World of Warcraft, a bit of Diablo, and a bunch of other stuff. You may remember the trailer for it. It had this guy. He had like a hollow chest, and you could see his heart, and his heart had a bunch of tendrils coming out of it and stuff like that. The trailer was all CG, so we have no idea if it, what gameplay it was going to be. I think the deal was that it was going to be like a Diablo-esque thing. But either way, apparently it's been cancelled. Imaginary Studios, I would cancel it just from the name alone. Like, I can't believe you called your studio that. Anyway, the game was announced in April. I think it was announced in April, and then they showed off the trailer I was either at Gamescom or Summer Games Fest. I think it was like opening night live of Gamescom. I think that's when it was shown off. But according to a new report, it's been shut down. Most of this is kind of corroboration between some LinkedIn posts and some Twitter tweets from people who formerly worked for the company and so on. and that the studio has been shut down, which means obviously the project has gone away as well. This website is still up, but yeah, that's not great. The trailer looked interesting, I guess. Again, it showed no gameplay, so no real idea of what it was going to turn into. But yeah, announced and then cancelled within, I don't know, 8 months. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of games that we thought were cancelled, Rare would like to remind you that Everwild is still a thing with a holiday card. So we haven't heard anything about what Rare have been working on since they kind of wrapped up Sea of Thieves some stage in 2019. But we know they were working on Everwild. We don't really know what Everwild is. I'm guessing it's another Sea of Thieves type thing, a big open sandbox world that you can just explore with other people, but taking on more of a nature, druid, ranger type vibe instead of a pirate theme like the Sea of Thieves. That was my guess. There was a reveal trailer in 2019, and then in 2020 there was another, and then literally nothing. No details about how the game would play, no release date. We've gone years without Rare even popping their heads up to say what they're doing. But now they've put out this this holiday card in the last week or so. Hope you're closing this year out in style, as it's the day of fine gifts and finer food. Here's our offering, a delicious PNG for you to enjoy. Right, we're off to eat a Patago Titan's hypothesized weight in sweets till 2025. I assume that's a lot of sweets. A Patago Titan. Well, a Titan would suggest it's pretty big. And Patagonia, maybe that's what they're going with. I don't know. It sounds like it's big. Anyway, it's a lot of sweets. So maybe we'll hear more about Everwild next year. But this was more of a reminder from them that, hey, we're not dead. We are doing something. Speaking of dead, though, Dead Space 4 is dead. It's still not happening. It's like 12 years now of it still not happening. More, probably. Glenn Schofield says EA recently turned down his Dead Space 4 proposal. Glenn Schofield being the original director of the 2008 game, the original Dead Space. I think he was a producer then on Dead Space 2. I don't think he directed it, and I don't think he was around at all for Dead Space 3. So himself, Brett Robbins, who was creative director on the original game, and Christopher Stone, who was the animation director on the original game, all pitched to EA recently about, hey, let's do Dead Space 4, and EA basically said, no, go away. So Schofield talking to Dan Allen Gaming, well, we didn't go too deep. They just said, no, we're not interested right now. We appreciate it, blah, 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 blah. And, we know who to talk to, so we didn't go take it any further, and we respected their opinion, They know their numbers and what they have to ship and all that jazz. Either way, EA is more focused on football right now and Battlefield. That's what makes them their money, and it is shit, obviously, because they're sitting on a bunch of really good IP. They're sitting on Dead Space. They're sitting on Mass Effect. They're sitting on... Dragon Age just had the Veilguard come out, but it was a long time between Inquisition and the Veilguard. They're sitting on Anthem. I don't know if that's a good IP exactly, but you could make something... They could have made a decent single-player narrative thing, and I think that's kind of what BioWare were looking to make, like a co-op narrative game, and then... Anyway, we know the story about Anthem. We don't need to go into it. As well as a bunch of other fucking IP I'm probably not even remembering properly. EA have a lot of things that they have buried and killed over the years. Anyway, it is disappointing. But not entirely unexpected. The remake came out earlier, 2023? 2024? Was it this year? Go away. Did the remake come out this year or was it last year? I don't remember. Anyway, it allegedly failed to meet EA's expectations. Were EA's expectations realistic? Probably not. As we've seen with video game publishers, their expectations tend to be ridiculous. Either for reasons to just drum up investor money or to get out of having to pay bonuses to their staff. Because, hey, you didn't meet expectations, so you don't get your bonus, even though you sold a shit ton of them. Anyway. 2023. Okay, it wasn't this year. I was thinking, wow, this year was really long. The Dead Space remake, Studio Motive was reportedly keen to make another series entry after the franchise returned, but its plans were said to have been scuppered by lackluster sales, and now EA Motive are part of the Battlefield mines, which, like a lot of studios in Activision, ended up in the Call of Duty mines. Studios in EA end up in the Battlefield mines instead. So yeah, don't be expecting Dead Space 4 anytime soon. Another way to look at this, though, is that Glenn Schofield, in particular, is coming off Callisto Protocol. That also didn't do particularly well. Now, it had the kind of unfair in some ways, in that it was going up against the Dead Space remake, whereas the Callisto Protocol was very much meant to be and was marketed and billed as a spiritual successor to Dead Space. They were like, hey, here's just Dead Space again, but now it looks better. You know, it's a little unfair, but that's what happened. And there's some stories that came out about development practices, etc. I don't particularly think EA give a shit about enforced crunch or anything like that. If anything, they probably like it. But yeah, it's probably for the best that Schofield didn't get another run on it. By the sounds of things, he's not great to work with. Anyway, last thing we're going to talk about that isn't really bullshit, but it was nowhere else to put it. Shuei Yoshida's favorite PlayStation indie games of 2024. So Shuei Yoshida, Yosp, was he ever CEO of PlayStation? I think he was CEO of PlayStation at one point. I don't think he was ever CEO of Sony entirely. Hey, what's going on, Billy? But anyway, he is on his way out. He's retiring at the end of the year and is going to end up on just doing the rounds, I think, for various indie studios, but I don't think he's not going to be working for Sony anymore. And I think he's retiring entirely from the industry. I'm afraid I don't, Bailey. I don't remember. Apologies. But anyway, he had a list of pretty good indie games that came out in 2024. Now, obviously, since this is on the PlayStation blog, these are specific. My blanket gown, thank you. It's a blanket poncho thing. It has a hood as well. It's great. It's very warm. This being on the PlayStation blog, it's obviously only going to be PlayStation games, or games that came out on the PlayStation. But anyway, Pacific Drive is a really good kind of car survival type thing. You take your car out into like an SCP zone, try to get from point A to point B, collecting resources, take it back to your camp, make your car better, try to get further into the zone, and so that kind of thing. It was really good. I like Pacific Drive a lot. Animal Well, I have not played, but I have heard good things about it. V Rising, we played on the channel. It's sort of a vampire survival crafting kind of thing, where you can build your own Dracula Castlevania castle. It's pretty cool. Shigim is a really interesting kind of puzzle game that I haven't had a chance to play properly. I've only played the demo. But it's a kind of thing where you are the sort of shadow spirit and you jump from shadow to shadow. And it's kind of just how do you get through a level by moving between shadows, and taking advantage of the fact that people move. Like this guy is running, he's doing laps around the lake and that kind of thing. So you have to time it so you jump into his shadow and then you can jump into this and then, move over to other things. The Plucky Squire I will talk about a little bit later. Palworld, another game that I haven't played and I don't have any particular interest in playing. But from what I've seen, people seem to enjoy it. Neva is on my bucket list. I need to get, not my bucket list, my backlog, my bucket list. I need to get around to it at some point. It's from the same people behind Gree. Gree was a really good platforming game. It's a very pretty game. Neva has a lot of the same kind of platforming elements in it, but it also has an interesting combat mechanic. And you have this sort of nature spirit wolf thing accompanying you for a lot of the game. Anyway, I need to get around to that. Fear the Spotlight, I've seen a couple of live streams of it. It's a pretty interesting throwback to like old survival horror stuff. Resi 1, the original Silent Hill, that kind of thing. It's a little bit nicer. Like, it's not full on creepy psychological horror like Silent Hill, and there's not a shit ton of gore like in Resident Evil, so it's a little bit baby's first survival horror in some ways, although Crow Country is probably a bit closer to that. Slitterhead, I played the demo recently and I actually really liked it, so I'm gonna see if we can get a longer video or a longer stream of it up on the channel at some point next year. And Nine Souls is also on the backlog. Nine Souls is a kind of... It's kind of like a side-scrolling 2D Sekiro in some ways. And I think it does have some Metroidvania elements to it. But I am actually really interested in playing that game. And as everyone knows, Balatro has won a lot of games of the year. I haven't played it, but I understand the concept that it being extremely addictive to people. Anyway, last couple of things we're going to take a look at. So it really wouldn't be a good year in review if we didn't hear about the War Thunder forums leaking classified information again. War Thunder devs make Christmas wish, stop leaking military secrets. So you may not be familiar with this, but the War Thunder forums in particular are notorious for classified government military details being leaked just to win pissing contests, essentially. Anyway, classified details are being leaked online again through the War Thunder forums. This time around, it was because of some fighter jet thing. $124 million Eurofighter Typhoon. Gaijin Entertainment, the developers, have once again asked that fans refrain from leaking military secrets. This happens all the fucking time. It's hilarious. Anyway, the crux of the issue here was that the Eurofighter Typhoon has this really fancy radar thing that it can do. Fans on the forum were arguing that this should give the fighter specific abilities in the game, and it wasn't getting those abilities. They should argue about that kind of thing. And then somebody, just to prove their point, just dropped the fucking manual on the forum. Was like, there, see, it can do it. Which was, of course, classified information. So, to prove their point, someone posted classified details, a risky maneuver that got them banned from the forums and, you know, also potentially court-martialed. Anyway, please do not, under any circumstances, try to post, use, or share any sources unless you are 100% certain they are legally declassified and publicly safe for use. We will never handle or use them, and all it does is actively harm any possible future changes being possible by trying to use them. Do not do it. No good will ever come from it for you or the vehicle you are trying to post for. So, stop leaking classified information. I can't believe it happens all the fucking time. And anytime you do hear about classified information being leaked, it's like, is it War Thunder? Yeah, of course. Of course. Do I even have to ask? Of course it's War Thunder. Anyway, alright, one last thing. Fans have made a native Star Fox 64 port with modern flourishes. So Star Fox 64 is technically available for PC if you jump through some hoops and do some shenanigans. So there is a native PC port for Star Fox 64 out there called Starship. It is using this... it's converting to ROM into PC executable code, which means it's not going through any of Nintendo's proprietary things, which essentially means it's legal. There's no emulation stuff happening here. Nintendo don't have a legal leg. That's not going to stop them trying to do a cease and desist, but they don't have a legal leg here to go after with. It's the same reason that the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time port is still available, because technically they're not doing anything illegal. You do, of course, need to have the original Star Fox 64 ROM, which I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have the cartridge just lying around, right? And if not, I'm sure you can find it somewhere, buried on a website. Who knows? Anyway, that's your news. We don't really have a trailer, but I guess we'll play this one. See, normally I would play a new release trailer here. But there were new releases, but none of them were really anything to talk about this year. Anyway, or this week rather. So yeah, it being Christmas week, not a whole lot to talk about. Restitched looks promising, you know, as a successor to LittleBigPlanet, and since Sony have essentially wiped their hands or washed their hands of LittleBigPlanet, user-generated content, all that kind of stuff, having an outlet for that again would be good, because that community was, you know, very active and a very big community. So having that disappear with Mini Molecule servers being shut down, it's good that they have something coming back to them. Industry bullshit wise, having games, you know, just announcing a game earlier this year and then having it cancelled within the same year is a bit nuts. I guess, I mean, knowing how like the industry's investment has sort of dried up in this year, essentially 2024. LittleBigPlanet was so good. I know there was such a great time, but some of the user-generated levels were in like, they could have been their own game. They were that good. LittleBigPlanet 2 in particular, like, really opened up the design suite that you could just make anything. Like LittleBigPlanet 1, most of them were just side-scrolling platform levels. And some people did some really inventive things, but they still kind of played like a side-scrolling platformer. But LittleBigPlanet 2 was like, lol, we're just gonna make whatever I want. Like, somebody made Final Fantasy VII in it, and it played really well. You know, like weird kind of physics things happening, sure, but otherwise, yeah, that was just Final Fantasy. I think somebody did Metal Gear Solid, the opening base section. They didn't do the whole game, but they did like a sizable chunk of the first bit of the game. So yeah, if we can get something like that going again, that would be great. We'll see. You know, obviously they don't have Sony budget for that kind of thing, so it's probably not going to be as good or as robust or as ambitious and so on, but if they can reignite that kind of interest, who knows? We might see a LittleBigPlanet 4 at some point. I saw the Metal Gear Solid one. It was really good. I was really impressed by it. Dead Space 4 not happening. Again, not exactly surprising. EA, as we know, are kind of all in on EA Football Club and Battlefield, because that's where all their money comes from. So they're not really interested in, to them, wasting money on, you know, single time. What's the way to put it? Just single purchase games or something like that. I don't know how to put it. Non-live service things that they can't just milk money from for, you know, months and months and months, and then put out another tiny update and charge full price for it again. Anyway, so it's not surprising. What's more frustrating is that EA don't just sell the Dead Space IP to somebody and let them do something with it. You know, they just sit on it. They sit on that. They're sitting on Mass Effect. They're sitting on Mirror's Edge. For a long time, sitting on Dragon Age. I think it was a lot of effort to get Dragon Age the Veilguard out. And there's a ton of other EA IP that I've forgotten about. You know, it was a meme for a very long time that once EA acquired you, you were buried, you know, within a year or so. So there's all those IPs they're sitting on. Bullfrog, Mercenaries. Tons of them. Tons and tons and tons of stuff. A lot of people hated the new Dragon Age. It's difficult to tell how much of that is just the, you know, the shitty grifter, like conservative right-wing grifter guys just drumming up shit to pay their bills, and how much of it is like legitimate issues with the game. I think from long-term fans of Dragon Age, they felt it was a bit safe, and they wanted to go a little bit further into the game's mythos and the game's lore and what have you, and I think they felt that it was a bit too... Yeah, it was just a bit too safe. They just didn't go far enough with the story. Game mechanic-wise, Dragon Age is all over the place, so it's hard to say. Like, Dragon Age 1 plays a lot more like a real-time Dungeons & Dragons, almost. Dragon Age 2 was almost a pseudo-action RPG. Inquisition was kind of in between. I haven't seen Veilguard's combat properly, but from what I've heard, it's okay. But it's not the original sort of tactics-based one, so it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell if the gripes are legitimate or not, basically. Because it's the same kind of people who give shit because Aloy has a man chin or that kind of thing. Like, it's not even bother to listen to those people. Anyway, that's it for our news this week. But as it's going to be probably the last stream of the year, I just wanted to do a year in review of the channel. So this probably will not be super interesting to anyone but me, but I'm going to go through it anyway. So this year, games featured on the channel was obviously significantly less because I didn't stream anything after September, or personal life reasons. Things happened. My mental health was not in a good place in and around the end of September. But even at that, we were probably not going to be doing as many games. We were on track to be doing a lot more Let's Plays this year. So it's unfortunate, but I had to protect my mental health, I suppose. So we were in that position. We'll be getting back to it in January, so hopefully those numbers will change. Anyway, the average has gone up ever so slightly. Margin of error, I suppose. With fewer games, maybe it just doesn't spread out as much. But our average last year was 79 over on Metacritic. Our average this year is 80. So we're still swinging in. More or less, the games that I show off are decent. They mightn't all be amazing, but for the most part, they seem to be at least good. Similarly, OpenCritic, slightly more, but again, smaller data set, so there's less room for variation, but the same deal here. Yeah, mostly good to great games, and then a handful of not so great games, as you'll see. So according to Metacritic, these were our top 10 and bottom 10 games that were showcased on the channel. Astrobot was Game of the Year at the Game Awards, was the Game of the Year in a lot of other places. Was top contender according to Metacritic, 94. Resident Evil Remake HD, 91. It's actually going to be interesting because OpenCritic is so much newer, younger than Metacritic. It doesn't have review scores for a lot of older games. So the top 10 is going to look really different, basically, compared to the two of them. Cocoon is a really good puzzle game. I quite liked it. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, similarly, both of them on 88. Again, very good puzzle game. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was a great return for the Prince. It was also a very different Prince of Persia game. If anything, it was going back to some of the original. Unfortunately, Ubisoft have disbanded that team, so that's kind of shit. This Bed We Made was a really cool narrative game where you were a hotel maid in and around, I think it was the 60s or the 70s. It was something about when civil rights movement was kind of happening. You're in Canada, and there's a kind of a, I think it's gay rights is happening in Canada in and around the time. I think that's when it was set. And a murder takes place in the hotel, and you are kind of intrigued by it because it seems like the person who was killed was also kind of stalking you, so that you might be involved in it in some way, but as the story unfolds, you find out that it actually has nothing to do with you. But now you've implicated yourself because you've been fucking with the evidence, so like the second half of the game is how much evidence do I hide and how much of it do I leave out, sort of altered the narrative in some ways. It's a really interesting game. I really liked it. Inscription, I think probably a lot of people are aware of, but this is a really cool meta card game that has a story inside the story and then a story outside the story and kind of thing going on. There's a lot of really weird shit happening in Inscription that is great. It's really, really good. Really well done. Stasis Bone Totem is a super grim point and click game. Its story is just, wow, people are really shit. Like, people are just horrible all the time to everybody. There's one or two scenarios in that where if I wasn't on stream, I might have just stopped playing because I was feeling ill just thinking about it. Anyway, Crow Country, I likened like Fear the Spotlight to Baby's first survival horror game. Like, Crow Country is very much Baby's first survival horror game. It was a really good throwback to the old Resident Evils in particular, but it was done so well. Like, it's almost like a perfect homage to the whole thing. Crow Country is really good. I actually want to play it again because there are you do get, like like the original, like Resident Evils and what have you, there are unlocks for finishing the game and getting different things. Resident Evil 0, I'm surprised, has such a high score. Because it's not that good. It does not deserve an 83. I don't know who gave it that. But Metacritic is an aggregator. Enough people gave it that kind of a score. Enough people gave it more of that, basically, because it's an average. Anyway, Resident Evil 0 was nowhere near as good as 83. It did not deserve that. Anyway, moving on to the bottom 10. Silent Hill, the short message is... that's a high score even for that. That game was garbage. It's really kind of ham-fisted, psychological suicide, teen suicide thing going on. The story itself doesn't even really make a whole lot of sense. The only real saving grace for it is the monster design. The Sakura looking thing that has the cherry blossoms all over its face and its body, and that design was really good. And the transition, to be honest, the environments are really good. Okay, fine. The game looks good. let's give it that. It looks good. The story's not great. The dialogue, the plot, what have you, not particularly good. The scenario's not all that interesting. Plus, it's not set in Silent Hill. It's set in Germany. There's a lot of things wrong with that. The Alone in the Dark remake, reboot, I think that's they're lowballing that. It was better than 63. It wasn't good, necessarily, but it wasn't that bad. I would have put it somewhere in the 70s. It was alright. Penny's Big Breakaway is this really great concept for a platformer. It's like a yo-yo that's almost the same size as your body, so it has a lot of momentum to it. It pulls you along. You can use it to do like Spider-Man swings or just yeet yourself across the map. You can run on top of it and use it as like a rolling ball and this kind of stuff. It's really good concept, but it's super buggy. Like, it's really glitchy, which makes it great because I've seen a lot of really good speedruns of it because they just break the shit out of it. But to play, it gets really frustrating because it's one of those games where you're trying to do everything flawlessly to get like a really good score on the level. It's like level based, time attack, that kind of thing, and having glitches just get in the way of it. It's just super frustrating. Still Wakes the Deep, again, lowball. I'd have put that higher than 74. Still Wakes the Deep is from the Chinese Room. Those are the developers behind Everybody's Gone to the Rapture and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 coming out next year. So Still Wakes the Deep, you're on an oil rig. It's in the 80s, I think, out on the North Atlantic Sea, which is off the coast of Scotland. And some eldritch horrors have been awoken from deep beneath the sea, and they've taken umbrage with your drilling and have decided to destroy the oil rig while you're on top of it. But at the same time, anyone who comes in contact with the eldritch horrors becomes an eldritch horror themselves, so now you're also being stalked by horrible monstrosities that defy explanation. I'm not usually a big fan of hide and seek type of stealth horror, stuff like Outlast, stuff like Amnesia, that kind of thing. I don't like the if they catch you, you die, instant death thing, and you just have to hide. Because once they've caught you once or twice, you're like, oh, you caught me again. Great. Like, it's not scary anymore. It's just, you're just pissing me off. You're just keeping me from the rest of the game now. It's really annoying. It was okay, but I found it okay in Still Wakes the Deep because of how scripted it was. Like, you are technically still doing a hide and seek kind of thing, but the monster moves in a very obvious pattern. It turns itself into more of a puzzle game than anything else. Instead of stuff like Outlast, Amnesia, where you're not really sure what the monster's doing, and they could be doing anything at any one time. You don't even know where they are a lot of the time. Alien Isolation has a similar issue, and I do find that I have the same frustrations with Alien Isolation. But you at least do have ways of distracting the xenomorph, or just blast them with a flamethrower and they'll go away. Like, you have some way to fight back. And I'm not sure if that's true in Amnesia or Outlast because I never played them long enough. So I just got pissed off too early. I was like, no, fuck it, I don't like this kind of game. Maybe you do have ways to fight back. But you don't get them early enough, I guess, because it annoyed me. Anyway, Nobody Wants to Die is from Critical Hit Entertainment. They're people who were... Sorry, Critical Hit Studios. People from... I think they worked on The Witcher or Cyberpunk. Anyway, CD Projekt Red, regardless. Nobody Wants to Die is this dystopian noir future thing. Cyber noir kind of thing, where this technology has been created where people are able to body jump. So they can take their consciousness and put it in another body, essentially. And it's become this thing where if you have enough money, you're effectively immortal. You can just jump to younger bodies all the time. They implement this thing as part of like US healthcare that everybody has to sign up to this program. And once you hit 21, you are now effectively renting your own body. And if you can't keep up the rent, your body is seized, and then anybody can then buy it off you. And what that essentially means is, you know, young people who are in the prime of their life and maybe they're super attractive and really athletic and what have you, you know, it's ensured that they're not able to afford their own body anymore. So that goes up to auction and goes for a lot of money, and you have rich pieces of shit walking around in young, very attractive, athletic, intelligent, whatever bodies. Super dystopic thing. Murders happening. Someone's found a way to actually break the immortality technology, and that's obviously scared a lot of the elite upper class people. Really cool world building. I think they didn't go far enough with it. I would have liked to have seen further implications of this whole system. They only really sort of allude to it, and it's in some kind of like background documents and some newspapers you find. I get that they wanted to keep it small, keep the budget small, so they just focused on this one guy's story, but I would have loved to have seen a bigger world. And maybe they'll get around to it, I don't know. Banishes Ghosts of New Eden. We did a full Let's Play of... this is from Don't Nod, this is the people behind Life is Strange and Vampire. Banishes was specifically the Vampire team working on it, so that was their follow-up. And it's set in New Eden, which would be the New World, what would become the United States of America. Still a British colony at the time. I think it's at that point. I don't think they've gotten their independence yet. And the gist of it is, hey, no one's been over here to exorcise ghosts and demons and shit forever. So it's full of ghosts and demons and what have you. So that's your job. Their job is to deal with the angry ghosts and what have you. It was okay. It wasn't amazing. I don't know. I kind of think like they could make something really good with the sequel. You know, now that they've kind of got the grounding of it, but they kind of did the same thing with Vampire in that Vampire was okay. And if they took another shot at it, I think they would have done a better job. But then they went on to do Banishers instead, and I think they're going to do the same thing here. Although Don't Nod has cancelled a bunch of upcoming projects, so maybe not. Maybe Don't Nod's not going to be around for much longer, we don't know. El Paso Elsewhere from Scaffold Studios. These are the people behind I Am Your Beast, and something else that I can't remember the name of. El Paso Elsewhere is a really good throwback to like Max Payne 1 and 2. So it's got that jumping, slow-mo, bullet time stuff all over the place. And then it's wrapped up in a kind of supernatural vampires and werewolves and zombies and that kind of thing. And a really good narrator, like really good voice work from the main guy. It's very well done. System Shock, this is the System Shock remake from 2023. I kind of mixed on this because I do really like it, but we played it on PlayStation. So this Let's Play is still technically ongoing, sort of. Like I haven't played it since September, but it's still technically ongoing. And we played it on console rather than PC because I just don't like playing mouse and keyboard. It's personal preference. I don't. It hurts my hands. So I'd rather play it on with a controller, but it wouldn't run properly off the Steam Deck, so that left us with PlayStation. And the PlayStation controller configuration, controller layout is not good. It's really bad. It's just not set up properly. There are just fully features that you just can't access with the controller. Like, you can't turn on and off your mods properly. You can't hotkey them or anything like that. Now, obviously, it makes sense. You have fewer buttons. But I would have thought they'd have a bit more of an elegant design to it. They have put out a bunch of patches since then, so I have been meaning to go back and check if my initial issues are fixed or not. But I guess we'll see. Final Fantasy III, this is specifically the Pixel remaster, so the most recent redo of Final Fantasy III. 79's a bit high, I think. Final Fantasy III has some interesting ideas, and I do like that they brought back the job system. And I do like that you were able to sort of mix the job, or pick your job rather, other like Final Fantasy 1 where you're sort of locked into it from the beginning. You could kind of jump around to Final Fantasy 3, pick the ones that you thought suited the occasion. The job system of Final Fantasy 5 is substantially better. But it has the makings of it in 3. I think my real issue is that there's just no proper story in Final Fantasy 3. It's hard to tell what you're actually doing at any given time or why you're doing it, other than save the world business. I guess it's expected. It's like an original Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, Famicom thing. They weren't exactly huge on exposition. It took up too much space on the cartridge, so they couldn't put it in. But it's still a bit... could have done a bit better. Anyway, Open Critic, we still have much the same games, but as I said, they don't have review scores for the older Resident Evils. Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 0 HD, and so on. So the top 10 is a little bit different. We have all of the Final Fantasies made their way into the top 10 that we played this year. So 3, 4, and 5 we played. Final Fantasy 4 is really good. It lives up to its reputation. It's a really strong story. The combat mechanics are really good. Everything about it is as good as people say it is. Final Fantasy V, I talked a little bit about it there about Final Fantasy III. Its job system is just so much better. Because while you still can choose your jobs in between, you can also like bring across aspects of other jobs into another one. Like you can take a dragoon and a white mage, you know, and just like smush them together. So now you have a white mage that can like jump up into the sky and disappear for rounds. You probably don't want your white mage to be disappeared for a round, but you could do it if you wanted to. Or you can have a black mage and a white mage combo that isn't a red mage, you know, that has even more power than a red mage. You could have a monk that can also wear armor, so they're like a little bit hardier, and this kind of stuff. I thought that was really cool because it means your party is super adaptive. And you can really make it your own. Now, obviously, by the time you get to the game, everybody knows everything. So you're just making 4 players or 4 characters who are gods at that point. But in between, you know, you prioritize the stuff you want. And then V Rising made its way in there. I talked a little bit about it there on Shuhei's indie picks. I got super into V Rising when we played it on the channel. And then I went off to go and then platinum it afterwards. So building up your castle is obviously the best part. Making all the different rooms, trying to survive with the day-night cycle, with you being a vampire, that kind of thing. My major gripe with it is that it is not in any way balanced for single player. And I played entirely single player. So some of the later bosses that are required to unlock certain upgrades so you can do better things with your castle and so on, they're just bullshit hard for a solo player. They were crazy hard. I was very close to just saying fuck it. Fuck it, I've had enough. But I was so close to the platinum, I just wanted to push through with it. Anyway, that's done. Bottom 10 is largely the same. Resident Evil 0 made its way over here instead. Resident Evil 5 should not be that low, but I think this is specifically the most recent port to consoles. It's like the gold edition that was ported from the PS3 over to the PS4, and then it was redone again for PC or something. That one's a bit ropey, all right. And I can see why that has that score, but that's not the original Resident Evil 5 score. It's much, much better. But that's just because OpenCritic is young and just doesn't have those scores. Hollow Body is another game that we are technically still in the middle of playing. We've only done a part 1 of it. I've liked it so far. It is glitchy, but at the same time, it's a solo dev. Just one guy doing everything. So it's somewhat expected. And again, it has had multiple patches since then. So something to check up on later, see if it's in good shape. We didn't necessarily pause it for that reason. We paused it just because personal life shit happened. We definitely paused System Shock because I just wanted to wait to see if the console port got better. And then My Friendly Neighborhood kind of slipped into the bottom 10, even though it's really not that bad. 79. I'd have put it higher. It's like an 83, 84 for me. I thought it was really good. It's a first-person survival horror thing, but everybody's a Muppet. It's amazing. I just think it's it was an extremely fun, very funny game to play. We played it very early this year, but there is a full Let's Play of it out there for anyone interested. Anyway, this last thing we're going to look at before we wrap up is just my tier list for 2024. So a lot of it is games that are, well, all of it is games that were featured on the channel, and then there's a handful of games in there that, can I zoom in on this? Yeah, there's a handful of games on there that I played off stream that I really liked, and I just wanted to talk about them. So we'll work our way up from the bottom. Silent Hill: The Short Message we talked about already. It looked good, but that was kind of it. The original Alone in the Dark that we played before we did the Alone in the Dark remake, as much as it's credited with the start of the survival horror thing of, turning one location into an escape room, but then also putting horror on top of it, it's really hard to play. Like, it's awful. The control's awful. And it's very mean to you. Like, you can die so quickly from just completely innocuous things. Some of them not even your fault. Now, granted, this is a 1993, 94, something like that game. Like, game design has come a long way since then. But yeah, it was rough. It was rough to go back to, I'll tell you that. Reveal is a kind of walking simulator, pseudo horror thing. Reveal was okay, but the reason it's down that C is it does something in its narrative that is a real... It's not even a pet peeve. It's like worse than a pet peeve. Like, I hate when stories take this one particular trope. It's late in the game. I'm not going to say what it is, but it did it. People who've watched me stream long enough know what that is, probably, but I hated it, and that was the end of that. Although, having said that, there's another game on the list that did the same thing, and I didn't hate it as much. Anyway, Final Fantasy 3, again, we did a full Let's Play of it. I thought it was okay. Home Safety Hotline, played off stream. Home Safety Hotline is this kind of meta game where you are... you're part of this call-in hotline thing. People are calling up because they are experiencing some weird things happening in the home. And it's kind of mixed and matched with like mundane things, like these noises you're hearing are because your pipes are frozen and you need to deal with that, or you have termites, or you have rats or something like that. And then on top of that, there's like, yeah, there's a troll living in your walls, or yeah, that's a portal to another dimension. You might want to stay away from that, and these kind of things all mixed together. And your job is, I guess it's a little phasmophobia as well, but your job is, people call in, they tell you what their issues are, and you have to kind of find the entry in this bibliography, this bestiary of different things that it could be, and kind of like read the explanation and try to match that up with the person's dialogue and see like which creature if it is a creature and if it's a mundane thing or whatever, and tell them the correct answer. I thought it was a cool idea. Could have done more with it, but I'd rather see a game where they could have done more, where instead of a game where they did too much, I suppose. Plucky Squire, again, I played off stream. So the kind of gimmick with Plucky Squire is that it's Legend of Zelda, but it takes place in a storybook, and the characters are aware it's a storybook, and they're aware that the story's not going the way it's supposed to go. And then the other gimmick is that your character can kind of jump out of the storybook and walk around on the desk. And story things transpire that sees the bad guy jump out of the book and start fucking around and changing the story and stuff like that. So your character has to also jump out of the book and kind of wander around the environment. So it's got a little bit of you having this little storybook guy, you know, bumbling about around like coffee mugs and, you know, pencils and notebooks and stuff like that. It's got a fun presentation. The issue I kind of have with it is that it holds your hand way too much. And the actual gameplay is pretty basic. Presentation, amazing. The actual gameplay, not so much. Resident Evil 0 we talked about. I just didn't think it was that good. That's kind of the end of it. I think it's real downside, and it's the thing that people bring up that they really hate about Resident Evil, but it's the inventory management. The way Resident Evil works is that you have a limited number of items you can carry at once. And you have to kind of move back and forth between an item box that can carry a lot of things, and your own pockets that can only carry so much. And that was kind of has a bit of a risk to it. That's like, do I take a lot of weapons with me, but then I won't have space to collect like clue items or quest items or what have you. And that would require me to have to go back to the box, which means I'm going to encounter more enemies and so on and so forth. Resident Evil 0 allowed you to just drop items wherever you wanted, which meant that you never really had any real idea of where a lot of like key items could be, because you were just dropping them wherever. You're like, I haven't needed this thing in a while, I probably don't need it anymore, and then I drop it only to find literally the thing I needed it for, and now I have to trudge my ass all the way back and pick it up. Like, you have that kind of thing, but you have that kind of thing in the other Resident Evil games, but at least you kind of... The item boxes are generally placed in, like, hub locations that are kind of easy to get to. There's multiple routes to get back to them. Whereas if you're just dropping an item randomly in any room, who the fuck knows where it is? Description is so good. It is a really good game. It's very, very good. The Invincible, we're still down here at B. The Invincible is a pretty good kind of retro pop walking simulator type thing, where you are... It's like a kind of alternate future where the Soviets and the Allies were still kind of in the Cold War, but it's space. And you are kind of trailing this Allied vessel. You're playing for the... Well, they're not called the Soviets, but effectively you're playing for Space Soviets. You're a cosmonaut. And you're aware that this big Allied vessel has landed on this planet for some reason. You don't know why. And your higher-ups want you to figure out why. So you descend to the planet to figure out why. And shenanigans transpire. Turns out this planet may have been home to a intelligent species at one time that had since been killed off. You eventually find out why they were killed off, and it turns out, oh, this is a big fucking problem. We gotta deal with this right now. There's a bunch of different choices you can make, and that changes the ending in different ways. Some of them in like fairly drastic ways. It's not the usual kind of choose your own flavor ending kind of thing. It's like, no, a choice you made like way at the beginning of the game has directly affected the ending, which is good. I certainly prefer that kind of thing as opposed to the Mass Effect 3 ending, which is, what color coded ending do you want? Like, that was shit. Why is it at B? It kind of shouldn't be. It should be a B+. I'm going to change my mind on that one. That should be a bit higher up. Operation Tango, again, played off stream. Played with a friend. Operation Tango is a kind of co-op escape room in some ways. So the gist of it is one of you're both like super spies. One of you is a field agent. The other one is a support agent. And it's kind of talking to each other to work your way through a series of puzzles. It's got a little bit of keep talking and nobody explodes. You know, one person can see only one bit of the puzzle, the other person sees the other bit of the puzzle, and you have to like collaborate to make it work. I only have it low is because it's really short. It's a very short game, which is a bit disappointing. Nobody Wants to Die we talked about already. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. This kind of goes with the Plucky Squire a little bit in that the presentation is really good. It's got a lot of like kind of funny. Now it's like unexpected that a Borderlands game would be funny, but it's like really good like parody Dungeons and Dragons stuff that I just thought was really funny. I play Dungeons and Dragons a lot. Like it's just tickled my funny bone, shall we say, for that. But otherwise, it's a pretty boring shooter. It's just a really, really boring shooter. Your characters don't really stand out that much. The classes are really basic. Everybody has like a big screen wiping move, and everyone has like some kind of support move. Some of you might have familiars. That's kind of it. Like it doesn't have the same kind of really unique characters like Borderlands 1 and 2 had. I never played 3, so I don't know how well they played, but each of those characters played very differently. Like, yes, you did eventually just shoot everybody, and I have the same gripe with Borderlands 1 and 2, which was kind of just a boring shooter at the end of the day. But at least the characters' abilities were fairly unique. But in Wonderlands, not really. Like, your gun is far more important than whatever character class you picked. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami is really good point-and-click adventure detective puzzle game. It's got a little bit of deduction. See what they did there? That's got like Return of the Obra Dinn to it. You know, it's like fill in the blank kind of thing. As it turns out, I really like that kind of puzzle. I really like those kind of fill in the blank thing, because Rise of the Golden Idol is up there in S tier, and that's just a longer version of fill in the blank. It's really, really good. This Bed Me Wade, again, we had to talk about already. A Highland Song is this kind of interesting. It's kind of like a side-scrolling walking simulator, except you're running. So it's a running simulator, I guess. But it's kind of telling this story, but depending on the route you take, the story will change. But it feels like it's done on the fly, and it feels like it is directly responding to the things you're doing in the game. You know, like it feels like it's just generating it as it goes. It's not in the background, obviously. It's not doing that. But that's what it feels like when you play it, and that's kind of the point. Like, if that's what it feels like, then that's what it is. I'm only at B+ because the gameplay does get a bit samey, and it is expecting you to play it multiple times, and the game doesn't change enough to, you know, really push you to play it multiple times. Penny's Big Breakaway, we had a chat about. Still Wasted Hollow Body. Dead Island 2, I'm still playing through this with a friend. Again, presentation, it looks really nice. Some of the moment-to-moment stuff is interesting. The set pieces are kind of interesting and fun. But it's such a slog. Like, it really is just such a slog. The whole leveling system with your loot is just kind of pointless, it feels. Because, so if you're not familiar with it, it's a zombie beat 'em up, essentially. First person melee thing. There are guns, but for the most part it's a melee thing. So it's a zombie survival thing. You're in LA, modern times. So it's a parody of Hollywood in some places as well, which is interesting. The reason why level-based loot doesn't really work is because the weapons themselves break as well. So you're trying to match the level of your weapon with the level of the zombie, and you obviously want to have a higher number. But because your weapons break, you're still going to have to just pick up shit later on to just make up for it. And at that point, the fight just becomes a real slog. So you're wasting your time repairing this weapon that you know you're just going to be replacing in a while because it's not a high enough level. And in that case, I just would have said, why'd you bother? Like, why bother? Just make it an upgradable thing. Like, you can pay to level match the weapon. Like, if you have a level 9 thing and you've moved on to level 15, you can pay to bump it up to level 15, but it's exorbitant expense. That you're just better off waiting to see if you just find a random level 15 item somewhere. I just think it's a mismatch, honestly. They should have just given you a rotating bunch of weapons that you could upgrade independently. But whatever. They're building it off the original Dead Island, so that did it that way, so they're going to do it that way. Anyway, Vanishers, the Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. It's a really fun anime JRPG. Have like a lot of party members. It's like a real-time, it's not a turn-based thing. Some really cool opportunities for synergizing combos and attacks and that kind of thing. Really gorgeous world. Like, a lot of the maps are really pretty. And it just has a huge roster of characters to pick from. I haven't finished it, so it's possible that later on I get into the game, it might drop down in the tier list, but right now it's in and around there. Indica is another walking simulator, which you're playing a nun in, I think it's pre-revolution Russia. And she is maybe either, I'm probably going to use the wrong words here, but it seems like she's bipolar or schizophrenic or something, but she thinks she's possessed by the devil. And that manifests as the devil talking to you and sort of ridiculing you and like making fun of you and stuff like that. Now, what's not clear in the game is whether or not she actually is possessed by the devil or if it's a mental health issue thing. You don't know. And I guess deliberately you're not meant to know. Like, the game isn't going to tell you which way it is. Make it up. Decide for yourself which one it is. I'm not going to talk about the ending, but the ending is very powerful to it. It was difficult to play through. Again, it was another one of, if I wasn't streaming it, I probably would have stopped, as it was quite rough. Not in gameplay wise, just in content. Like, it's trigger warning stuff. But I did think the story was really good. And I think it was up for an award for either Best Narrative or Best Indie Game with Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which is up in the S tier. But yeah, it is definitely in contention for Best Narrative. V Rising, we had a chat about already. Journey to the Savage Planet is an interesting one. So that was originally going to be a Google Stadia exclusive, but then Google Stadia shit itself. And luckily it was rescued from the Google Stadia prison and made its way onto various other consoles. It's a really funny first-person Metroidvania that is very much anti-capitalism. It's like a anti-capitalism parody kind of thing. I did like a lot of the exploratory stuff. Again, I did like its presentation. It does some really good, what's the way to put it, real life skits. What's the way to put it? Live action skits, like actual actors just filmed live action. That are some of them are cringe, obviously, but they're funny, and I think they're really well done. There is a sequel out next year, which is Return to the Savage Planet or Revenge of the Savage Planet or something like that, which takes the anti-capitalism even more, because Journey to the Savage Planet was made and then launched pretty much the same day that Google Stadia stopped operations. Or not stopped operations, but announced they were stopping operations. So it was a real sort of, wow, fuck you moment, essentially. And then Revenge of the Savage Planet is them taking their experience with Google and applying it to their already anti-capitalist game. So that will be interesting to see how the story changes, because they did not pull punches at all in Journey. So this will be a fun one. what even was Google Stadia? A game console? Do you know the way Xbox or Microsoft right now is trying to say that everything is an Xbox? You know, that your phone can play Xbox games, that your TV can play Xbox games, that your tablet can, and so on. Any kind of smart device. Google Stadia was that, essentially. It was trying to be a cloud console. So you could just log in on any kind of Google supported service, log in on your browser, on your Chromecast, on your TV, or the Google Chrome browser on your phone, etc., and be able to access the game and just stream it. They came upon the same issue that every single person who has tried to make game streaming happen has realized, which is the infrastructure isn't there. People's internet outside of Silicon Valley, internet speeds are really slow. And the bandwidth is non-existent. Like, game streaming is just not good enough to warrant the level of investment that Stadia were putting into it. Microsoft are going to figure that out too. As we talked about in the industry bullshit stuff, that their servers shit the bed at Christmas. Like, anyway, they'll all learn their lesson. Everyone has to repeat history, it seems. My Friendly Neighborhood, we had a chat about Resi 5. I really like Resi 5. I know it gets a lot of shit from Resident Evil fanbase because it just was action, you know, Action Man, and took Resident Evil into more of an action thing instead of a survival horror thing, but I really like it. I think it's a good game. Is it Resident Evil? Not really, no. But I still thought it was good. Yeah, cloud gaming sucks. It's not ready. It's not ready for prime time. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, again, really good Metroidvania. Some of the bosses are a bit bullshit. Certainly the latter stages of the game, enemies start to just become annoying to fight instead of like a fun combat experience. They're just, oh, not these fucking guys again, you know? That kind of thing. Pacific Drive, talk about their Yosp's indie choices. It's a good survival game, you know, if you're interested in those kind of survival mechanics. And it takes a little bit of a different approach to it because it's like a driving version of a survival game. It's kind of interesting. Inscription is really good. I talked about it in the top 10s of Metacritic, OpenCritic. It's a very, very good game. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is an excellent puzzle game. And it does have a really interesting narrative going on. And this is the other one I said that does the story trope that I hate. And it was the reason why Reveal is so far down on the list. But Lorelei and the Laser Eyes like signposts it well in advance. That, hey, we're gonna do this thing that you kind of hate. I hate it. I know everybody doesn't hate it. I think this is very much a personal beef that I have with this particular story trope that I'm not going to mention because I don't want to spoil the thing. But again, I have mentioned what that particular story beat is to elsewhere on the channel. You'll know what that is. But they signpost it well in advance, and it's earned when it happens. No problem. Reveal does not signpost it in any way. It just randomly, this thing happens. And it's just, really? Anyway, I just thought that was kind of shit. Otherwise, Lorelei and Laser Eyes, amazing puzzle game. It's kind of one of those puzzle games that you might want to play co-op. It's not a co-op game. It's a single-player game, but you might want somebody nearby to like talk through the puzzles because some of them are really hard. Some of them are. This is going to require a lot of maths. And then some of them are, wow, I'm an idiot. How did I not see that was the answer? Like, I think having a friend nearby would be helpful. Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess is one game that I'm kind of frustrated I didn't play on stream. Because I got super into it. So this is a Capcom game. It has a lot of Okami inspiration to it. It's very much Japanese folklore, leaning into the Shinto religion of nature gods and nature spirits and stuff like that. It is kind of a tower defense type game, or a base defense type game. So the gist of it is you have the Path of the Goddess. So it's a level-based thing, and you are trying to get the goddess from point A to point B. She has to purify the path as she goes, so she's going to be going really slow. And as she's moving along, she's going to be attacked by a bunch of demons. The demons only attack at night, So you have the daytime period to prepare your defenses. You can set up like axemen to like take the main path. So if anybody comes up the main path, they can hack the shit out of them. You can set up archers or marksmen, gun bows. What? Guys with bows and guys with guns, not gun bows. I don't know what that is. Set those guys up, and then you got like guys who have magic powers and shit like that. But the point is tower defense. And it's just done really well. It's really well balanced. Like, at no point did I find that this enemy is bullshit. You know, like it has way too much health or does way too much damage or anything like that. Like, I felt like, no, that was my mistake. I should have put this person here instead. At the same time, you do have your main character who's like a flying unit. He can just... flying in the military sense, and that he can just move wherever he wants. Not that he can actually fly. And he plays a little bit more like your standard video game brawler type guy, you know, square, 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 triangle, 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 you know, combos and stuff like that. And you can drop in and out of like giving orders and then dropping back into a more real-time action kind of stuff. It's got a lot of really cool stuff going on. And its presentation, they built everything as miniatures. So they've like built like little miniature huts and little miniature villages and shit like that. And just took really high resolution pictures. So photogrammetry is what that's called. And they use that to apply like textures to the environment, and it looks really good. Like, it looks really, really good. The same thing is done in Fantasian, which we haven't got to play yet, but I'm going to be playing that. It'll be up on the channel at some stage next year, January. But they did the same thing there, and it, again, same effect. Looks amazing. Photogrammetry tends to be done for like high resolution textures, but it's rarely done for like the entire environment. And it's what they did for this game, and it just turns out really, really well. Like, everything looks amazing. And it's already using the Resident Evil engine that Capcom is using for a lot of their most recent games, that itself is already very good. So it does look great. I'm a little frustrated with it. Not with the game itself, just that I didn't stream it. Because at this point, I've gone far enough in the story that if I show you anything, it's a spoiler. So I'm kind of fucked there. I'd essentially have to start over. I really don't want to start over. So anyway, Rise of the Golden Idol. We played the Curse of the Golden Idol early last year, I think. And it is a fill-in-the-blanks puzzle deduction thing, where there's the golden idol working its way through history through the hands of a bunch of people, and as it turns out, the people it comes into contact with are cursed. They die mysteriously in mysterious ways. Rise of the Golden Idol, storyline wise, it's pulled a little further into modern times, so it's somewhere around the 60s and 70s now, whereas Curse of the Golden Idol was like 1700s 1800s, something like that. But it's more of the same, but that's not a bad thing, because these puzzles are really good. Story setup this time around is what would happen if, you know, the Golden Idol's curse affected like the world kind of thing, like everybody instead. It's well done. I think it was well done. Anyway, S+ tier, Astrobot was Game of the Year. It's probably good enough reason why it should be up there, but yeah, it did lean pretty heavy on nostalgia. But in between that, it's just a good game. It's just a fun game to play. Outside of the, am I technically playing an advertisement feeling, which isn't great, but you could tell that the developer did have a lot of love for the games they chose to showcase. You know, the characters they chose to bring out, and like the little animations that play when you interact with them. That's obviously a huge part of Astrobot, but even in between that, the level design is really well done. The various gimmicks that some of the levels have are really well done. Astrobot is, despite being a robot, is very emotive. You know, he's very animated. Like even small things like just spinning the camera around so Astrobot is looking at the camera and he waves at you. Like that's such a small thing, didn't need to be in there, but it's great. Like you really feel just good playing the game. And that's really hard to achieve. That's really, really hard to achieve, so well done. their Game of the Year award is well earned. And then Resident Evil, the remake of the original game, Resident Evil remake, remastered, re. That game was practically flawless when it came out, and it's only gotten better. Like, it still looks really good, still plays really good. The Crimson Head zombie mechanic that they added for the remake, where even if you kill a zombie, if you don't kill him properly, he comes back, and now he's even more of a threat. Just adds that extra level of danger, tension to the whole thing. So even if you know what you're doing, and you're working your way through the game, if you don't kill the zombie properly, he might come back and fuck up your whole game. You know, it does add that extra level of threat. But the presentation is still really, really good. It still plays excellent. Adding the analog stick controls, because I know trying to go back to tank controls would be painful for a lot of people, so adding the camera relative angle analog control stuff is super appreciated. But yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about the game. It's just very good. And then the last one I want to talk about, again, we played it off stream because we'd be playing it for like 2 or 3 years straight otherwise. It's Baldur's Gate 3. It's won Game of the Year last year. Super well deserved as well. The game is extremely reactive to the things you do, like mundane choices coming back later, just really allowing a huge level of customization to your character and the way you interact with the world, how you choose to interact with it, how you choose to approach set pieces. It's not just the kind of usual, you can talk your way in, or you can stealth your way in, or you can, you know, go in guns blazing kind of thing. It's like, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Anything you want to do, go in there. Like, does it essentially boil down to those 3? Probably, but there's still so many different ways you can do it. All of the characters are great. All of the voice work is amazing. And even on top of that, like, I play a lot of tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, and some of the changes they made to the rules to kind of fit to a video game are really good and really smart decisions. To the point that I have brought them in to my games. It's like, yeah, it should be like that. Why isn't it like that? Okay, fuck it. New rule. I'm just gonna use the game's rules instead. Some of them were really smart decisions. Some of them had to be made because they just wouldn't have worked properly in a video game. But otherwise, I just think the choices were really good. Like, there's some of them that would rely heavily on your games master, your dungeons master, just ad-libbing. Like, the ones most game masters dread to hear, like speak with dead, speak with plants, speak with object, because anybody can, because you can cast that on like almost anything, and it has to be able to talk back to you. And they made the change in the game that it was only certain people that it will work on, certain bodies speak with dead works on, certain plants, certain animals that those things work on. So you can't talk to literally everything in the game. But in a tabletop Dungeons & Dragons game, you absolutely can talk to absolutely everything if you want to. But yeah, that was a super good game. It was a really, really good game. And I definitely need to do another run at it. Anyway, that is my tier list for 2024. So overall, I'm a little disappointed 2024. Not with the games, it's mostly with the channel itself, because I just didn't do any games after September. So that was kind of frustrating. I think it was the right decision to make, to just take a break and let my mental health recover for some things happening in my personal life. But it's still a bit frustrating because there's a lot of games I wanted to get to this year that I just didn't. So I'm not going to try to jam them into next year. Like, we will still take a normal person's approach to game streaming, because jamming things in is what got me in that position in the first place. So we're still going to take a normal approach to it, but it is a bit frustrating, as it does feel like I missed, 3 months. Anyway, next week's weekly news recap will be the 1st of 2025. So we, on top of the usual things, new releases, industry bullshit, that kind of thing. Can't slow down time, man. That's it, exactly. If only someday I'll learn how to slow down time, but not today. But yeah, appreciate it. Next time, next week, we will have the usual stuff that we have on the weekly news recap. We'll also talk about what games that I'll be looking to feature on the channel in 2025. And hopefully by the time the video comes out, I'll also have my... hopefully by the time the stream is done, I'll have my games to look forward to in 2025 video. So I have a list of games that I'm keeping my eye on for next year, but it's like 250 games. I'm not doing a video for 250 games. That is too many. So I need to whittle that down to like a manageable number. I don't know what that number is yet, but I need to whittle it down. And by then, I can start putting a video together and hopefully get that done. I'm going to try to get it done before the next weekly news recap, but more than likely it'll be the one after that instead. Anyway, that's the plan. But that is it from me for today. Thank you, Billy, for keeping me company, and anyone else who's lurking. It's also appreciated. That's it from me for 2024 as well. So the next time you see me, it'll be next year. But don't worry, it's not that far away. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.